Hey, discussion meeting, Mount Lebanon Commission, Monday, March 11th, 2024. Mr. McGill, you can start.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight's agenda, we have a public hearing in consideration of an ordinance making technical amendments to the garbage fee ordinance. Consideration of the adoption of a standard resolution for a planning module for a subdivision on Beedling Road that has received preliminary approval from the planning board. We will have the consideration of commission liaison appointments to our new advisory boards. And then consideration of appointments to existing municipal boards and the new advisory boards. We'll have the consideration of the award of the Activate Uptown Planning Contract. We'll hear more about that later in discussion session. We'll have the consideration of the award of the Public Works Storage Building and grading and foundation work for the Fire Training Center. Consideration of the award for our 2024 Brick Street Restoration Program. Consideration of the award of the 2024 Crack Sealing Program. Consideration of the award of the 2024 Concrete Maintenance Curb Program. And finally, consideration of the award of the 2024 Root Damage Sidewalk Maintenance Contract.
Thanks. Great. Next up, field utilization study. Amanda Rost. I'm sorry.
I believe we have
And Ian as well.
Ian Smith and Tom.
Oh, hey.
And Tom Langston is here, and then Ian Smith is supposed to be online.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
dialed in. I do not
Okay.
know.
Right.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Ross. I've been the chair of the field advisory committee for the last couple of years. A subcommittee of four of us, Tom Langston, myself, Stacy Hill, and Ian Smith started this field census project several years ago. It's taken us a while to collect all the data and get it to you. In the meantime, we have talked to, this presentation was done with all the help of all these youth sports organizations that currently use the fields throughout Mount Lebanon, as well as the school district and the rec department. And we have gone over this study with all of them, and they're all on board with our recommendations. The data that you'll see today is from 2020-21. And there's a ton of data. We have so much data from 2021. If there's something that you are curious about or want to know who used what field, when, how much, what for, we can tell you. So if there's ever anything you want to know, please let us know. The aim here was to understand how the fields are used, to maximize the use of them, to figure out the process of how to use them, to improve that, figure out what improvements really need to be made, and to understand some economies of scale that could be helpful to all the various programs that use the fields. We focused the study on the fall and the spring of 2021, so the fall season of August to November, the first week of November, and then the March to June. That's when the field shortages are the most apparent to everyone, so that's where we really focused our energy. Have you guys seen, I understand it's in your packet and you've looked at it, because I want to try to kind of fly through this to get through it quickly.
Yeah.
So stop me if you have any questions, but
Just speak louder.
Okay.
Because everybody listening to make sure they. can
Sure,
hear this.
sure, absolutely. okay, so this first slide just looks at sports participation. This is across the sports. There's a growth rate of about 2.7% per year, and projecting that forward a couple of years, you're looking at an even greater issue going forward. So there's growth in many of the sports. Next slide. Looking at the utilization, it's important here to understand that utilization is actually permitting. It's very difficult to know once an organization permits a field that they actually are using it. So the best we can do is utilization. So you can see here, utilization is quite high for all of our fields throughout Mount Lebanon. Again, these are both municipal fields as well as school district fields. The stadium at the high school has the lowest utilization rate. The things highlighted in blue there are all turf fields. The lit fields are starred. So you can kind of get an idea of what's available out there and what those utilizations are.
Am I correct that in your study, it indicates the stadium use numbers directly related to the cost?
Yes, it's the most expensive field by far. So Seymour and Middle each are $17 an hour to rent currently. So if you rent the whole field, it's $35. If the upper practice field is $17 an hour, the stadium can be upwards depending on if you use lights, the bathrooms, et cetera. It can be anywhere between up to $200 an hour to $250. It depends. It's not even really clear what the price is because of the way they price things out. Okay, we can go ahead to the next slide.
And the upper practice field is still rock pile.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. There's always a discussion about what to call it. I was using the official term. It's officially called the upper practice field, but most people do finally call it the rock pile. You're correct. So when we ask the sports organization some open-ended questions of, do you feel like you get adequate space? Here are some of the open-ended responses that they would like to be able, that they don't have a space. I think a lot of agree, there's pretty much consensus that in the spring, weeknights is the hardest time to get field space. And that's a function of the way sports work. So in the fall, the sports usually practice during the week and play games on the weekends. Soccer and football kind of have worked out where they're, when they play their games. In the spring, baseball, softball, and lacrosse all play games during the week as well as on the weekends. So that makes things a lot different. It makes the schedules just far more complex in the spring. Moving to the next slide, we asked if you had an unlimited amount of field space in Mount Lebanon, what would you do to your program? And everybody has ideas on what they would do. A lot of people would have tournaments where they could raise some money. They would add age groups, they would add more teams, they would add more programming. And then I added a note here from the school district after meeting with the athletic director. He mentioned that even for him, they've added some programming in the last couple of years. And like this year, for example, the middle school had the ability to add 2 teams for girls and 2 teams for boys, but they don't have anywhere to put them. They don't have the space to do it. So even the high schools, and they've added rugby, they're adding girls flag football this year. They've added slow pitch softball. They're adding all kinds of programming, ultimate frisbee. And these are getting kids that don't play the traditional sports active and important to do. And he wants to invest in those kids, but it's very difficult because he's short on space as well. So looking at that's kind of our case for saying there's an issue. And I think anybody who deals with youth sports in the community would agree that there's an issue. It's going to be hard pressed to find somebody that says everything's fine. And if they do, they don't have a kid playing sports or they don't really understand the issue. So we looked at 3 different hierarchy of solutions here: better using what we have, improving what we have, and then building new fields, with obviously each thing getting a little more expensive. So looking at tier 1, next slide, go ahead. This is the optimization of utilizing the stadium. So we assumed $200 an hour for the price of the stadium, and we looked at the usage of that compared to other turf fields and did kind of an optimization study here to show that if they actually decrease the price of the stadium, it would be used more and they would actually make more money. So, and that we could do this and they would be better off, and we wouldn't have to worry about overusing the field because the Cedar turf field has been used, 75 to 90% of the time, and wear and tear on the field has held up very well. It's going over the life of the field, and we would expect the same thing to happen at the stadium. So,
It feels like the right time to ask the question.
Sure.
With Mr. Brogan, what's the feedback you're getting about this sort of thing?
they are definitely, the school district is, I think, definitely open to that. Now, the school board has to approve any changes in pricing for that. So it's not simply, John Grogan, actually, he's the athletic director, but he's not in charge of facilities or renting out the facilities. He has to go through that office of the school district, just like everybody else. So it's something I think that's on the books, and I have met with the superintendent and Mr. Grogan. So it's in the works too, and she's going to talk to the school board. So this is definitely one of the things on their to-do list that they could do to simplify it. It's a 2-page document to figure out what the price it is to rent the field. And the woman who works in the office doesn't even know, no one knows. Like, you can't say like it's $17 an hour. There's no set price. So it's very complicated. Nobody really understands it. And so that alone, just simplifying it would make it easier. And then that word would get out and people would use the field, because it was only used in the 2021 in the spring, in particular on the weekends, very little, just a handful of hours. In the fall, it's used a little bit more. Youth football uses it. But this is taking out the school district's use of it and what's left. And there's capacity there. It would help soccer and lacrosse in particular.
So you're getting a sense the school board is
Definitely open
interested
to
in-
this. Yes, I think so. Yeah. This second idea for just improving what we have is the idea of using a field czar. So it's very complicated process. If anybody's ever attended a field meeting, It's basically, it's all done by consensus. We start with the schedule from the previous year and spend a couple of hours going through each field and each week and figuring out who's gonna rent one field. There's no mechanism. The big thing to me is there's no mechanism to give fields back. So if you find out, we do this very far in advance and our registrations are not closed yet, and then we figure out what we need and then we might need not need as much. There's no way to say we don't need this to somebody else wanted. So that's one thing. So the grass fields are free. So those are another way that like people sign up to use them and then don't use them and someone else could use them. Also people don't truly understand that they'll say, like, I'm sure David gets 100 calls a week about the upper practice field, there's something here or something in a school district field, and that's not his area. So people don't understand that the fields are operated by two separate entities. So the idea here is a field czar can put all of that under one roof. So the school district would license this group, the field czar, the ability to permit the fields, all the school district fields, and then the rec department would do the same thing. All the rec department fields, the municipality fields would go to under one roof. So it would be controlled by one entity. And that person could really focus on, that would be their job to know the field usage and how that works.
You've got some items underneath that, like for instance, the small blocks of time that go unused. It seems like such an easy one to adjust. Is there something missing here? Just split into the two time slots? Is that?
Well, it is split into time slots, and some of that has improved over the years. In 2021, there were some more gaps. Some of the gaps have to happen because a lot of sports, like we now have it so the school district fields all open at 4:30, but some sports can't take advantage of that because if you have volunteer coaches that work, they can't get there till 6. So some of it is that, some of it's late at night, some of it's just one team wants an hour and a half, another team wants 2 hours. So it's not easy to have like set increments at places. So it fluctuates in the field meeting who wants how much time. But they do try to utilize all of that time. A lot of those at the turf for sure, a lot of those little half hours here and there have kind of disappeared over the years as people have negotiated for time.
And maybe the other thing too, the school district issues permits to who has the space. So I was asking David how many, it could be 20, 30 permits issued at one time for field usage. And if the team or the association has that field for the usage, technically it has to be given back to the school district for the school district to. So if it's a 1 day, 2 day window, it just doesn't happen.
I think one of the things we talked about at the meeting, which is a complaint that I've heard, is that some of those permits get issued and then the fields go unused. Because we've heard from teams where they pass by and said like, we would have loved to have been on that field, but the person who had the permit just didn't use it and we didn't find out about it. And there's, sounds like a mechanism where coaches can understand what's happening, but that might not pass through
Correct.
in a very efficient way, whether it's to other
And
teams or teams.
there is a sense of community among the programs. I know I'm currently doing the scheduling for the Lacrosse Association, and I just reached out to the Baseball Association and said, we have this grass field, we're not really using it this day. If you guys need it, let us know. There's some of that happening, but if you don't know who might need it, you wouldn't know to reach out to them. So there's ideally you would have a software program that would allow people to give back, send an email out, say this is open, does anybody want it? And then in season, and then the next layer would be, okay, you're out of season, but by chance, do you want to use this field? So it does seem like it's a pretty simple idea to have some software that would help do this in a more efficient manner.
Software that you kind of spec'd out.
We have not spec'd out any software, no.
Field czar is a great name.
Hurry, patent it.
All right, go ahead. So looking at the second tier where we're starting to improve the things we have, a lot of people will recommend lights. So this is just some data for you. If you put lights on any field, this is how many hours you could pick up from that field. So, and this is weekday hours. So in the fall, you could get 165 weekday hours, and in the spring, 150 weekday hours. And this is just based on what time the sun sets. And the current time. If they change the time, this is gonna get all screwed up. But that's an easy way to pick up time. It's just adding lights to a field. You can go to the next one. Turfing a field is also a common way to improve things. This does not get you more capacity, but it is obviously a more reliable source, a more reliable surface. You don't have to cancel. You should have seen if you passed the turf this weekend on Saturday. There were boys playing lacrosse for 6 hours in the snow and the cold and the rain, and it didn't matter because they're on turf, they can play. They wouldn't be able to do that if it was at Mellon or another field that, or Bird Park that had grass and mud and muck. So it's a higher upfront cost, but the maintenance, is a lot easier, and it's also revenue generating as of now, because you can charge money, a premium for the turf. So those are the benefits of turf. Go ahead. When we asked what improvements you would make to the different sports associations, everybody mentioned lighting and turfing things. So it's widely supported. Go ahead.
And just another comment on all of our fields, not all of our fields, sorry, all of our grass fields. After we have rains and things like that, the teams lose a lot of time to fixing fields, especially baseball, softball. Whether we're providing the extra dirt for them or they're bringing it in themselves, that's a lot of time lost trying to, fix fields that just don't, yeah. And those are even fields that have pretty decent drainage.
And
The ones that don't, like Bradford and places like that.
the other issue I didn't mention, by bringing everything kind of under one roof with this fields are issue, you would also have one person sort of in charge of closing a field when the weather is bad. Now the permits are issued and people are supposed to use their best judgment on whether they should use the field or not. And some associations are better at doing that than others. So it would be a way to kind of have somebody know how the condition of the fields and what should really be used. And also scheduling maintenance. That's not something we are able to even do right now. Because the fields are used, the time for growing grass and aerating and overseeding and all of those things are the exact same times that the weeks that the fields are at their most needed in the fall and the spring. So looking at sort of an out-of-the-box solution for gaining some space is looking at multi-purpose surfaces. So this is a futsal court that was installed at Jefferson Elementary School on their blacktop. The Soccer Association paid for this and worked with the school district to do it. Here's some data on how much it cost. And also 3 more school district fields and their dimensions, or not fields, blacktop spaces. That are all in sort of some state of disrepair that could be definitely upgraded. It shows kind of what the cost would be to pick up some space. These spaces are all fenced in and can be used for a wide variety of things. Soccer uses it for futsal. Lacrosse could use it for stick work. Field hockey has an indoor component of it that would use a surface like this. Flag football could use it because they're not tackling. Even tackle football could use it for a walkthrough if it's raining. So if it rains for 5 days and somebody has a practice somewhere, they could come to a surface like this and still make good use of the time with the kids. So there's a lot of different ways a surface like this could be used. It's also portable. The drainage is there. You can decorate it and paint it colors. And this one says Lebo on each end. And you can put different lines on it, et cetera. Go ahead to the next. So here's a long list of improvement projects. Everybody kind of has a dream list, if you will. So here's potential areas to light and turf. And I think the number one thing that's on your radar, I hope, and definitely was on the Sports Advisory Board's radar, is to re-turf the Middle and Seymour fields when that comes due in another year. And when that's happening, to light the other half of that field. Seymour Field is not currently lit, only Middle is. And then lights at the upper practice field is another. Jefferson and Mellon are not lit. Turfing the middle school fields is another one that I think the school district would do if they had the funds to do it. The multi-purpose surface things we mentioned. Another thing that's becoming more and more popular is the idea of a field house. So indoor space in the area. If anyone's familiar with Green Tree or South Point or any of the areas that have indoor spaces, those prices are at a premium and it's very difficult for youth associations to afford those now. So one idea floating out there is also putting a bubble or some kind of roofing structure over the upper practice field at the high school to make that an enclosed space that could not only increase the capacity in a real way, because you would be able to use it in the winter months as well. And then other amenities, Bird Park parking, permanent bathrooms, and a storm shelter there. The middle school, I know soccer games are there and they've had to cancel games if it's even a chance of rain because there's no storm shelter down there. Anybody who plays preschool micro soccer will tell you that you need permanent bathrooms down there. When you have hundreds of 3 and 4 year olds trying to use a porta potty, it's a disaster. I feel like it's a rite of passage almost for people in the community to go down and play soccer at Bird Park and deal with the porta potties. So that's a high on anybody with a young child's list there. And then there's also Brafferton parking, which I know is on your radar as well as improving Brafferton Field. And then upper practice field could use some bleachers and a scoreboard as well. So this is kind of a list of possible improvement projects. So to really, this tier 3 is to get new field space, and obviously in Mount Lebanon, land is at a premium. And this is really the only way to truly increase the capacity of, to fix the problem, the true shortage. You can turf things, that's not gonna give you any more capacity. You can light things that'll help a little bit, but to truly really keep up with the demand of fields, developing McNeely Park is the biggest and most impactful thing we could do. This is a drawing back from 2004, that was, just to give you an idea of the space and like what could possibly happen there. And so that is the number one thing, obviously the most expensive thing we could do to really improve the capacity available. And I have some figures on there that, like, if you were to add any field you added there would give you 486 weekday hours, 545 weekend hours across the fall and spring. Adding lights brings it up to like $1,400 hours per field. So if you put in 3 fields there, you're talking serious, 4,500 hours of extra field time if you lit it, just to give you an idea.
A question for Dave, back when fields were considered, what was the estimate then for cost?
So for this project?
Yeah.
Gosh, 20 years ago? Dan, do you have any recollection?
It was a couple million.
Between 3 and 4 million the last time we ran it up, and that's been
But we
years.
kept updating it in the capital budget as we
Yeah.
go along.
It's been a while since we.
Yeah.
You have to build a road to get that.
Well, and that's the number one thing. I know that they have tried to get a grant just to get the road built. Yeah, so
Well, you've got utilities, any kind of infrastructure,
Yeah.
water, sewer.
Are we allowed to do that there? Wasn't there some restriction on what could go in?
As long as it's used for recreation.
As-
purposes,
okay,
Because we've
that's
got
all
a
it is.
reimbursement grant.
And I think the idea is, I know the Sports Advisory Board looking at this, the idea here, if you look at the drawing, it includes a dog park, walking trails, parking, bathrooms, and 3 sports field.
Right.
I mean, I think we would all look at like a Peterswood Park as an example of a mix of both active and passive recreation that would you try to blend and make the whole community happy. I know it's impossible to do, but as you all know, that would be the idea here, that it wouldn't be limited to just active recreation. There are also places for hiking trails, and a dog park is something that's been on the list of things that the community's been asking for. So it could solve a lot of issues. So moving on here, talking about funding some of this stuff. So if we were to consolidate some of the scheduling, there would be a savings to both the school district and the municipality. So in turn, we would want to have some funding from both of those things. Sponsorships, again, both through the municipality and school district, could be improved. Private fundraising, I've talked to the people at the Mount Lebanon Community Foundation, and there's lots of different opportunities there to start funds. A lot of the sports organizations have funds, like the Soccer Association has a capital fund that they can use that's what they use to do the futsal court you guys saw. So other organizations have that as well. We can build on those, but also start a fund to help the community. I think private fundraising is a really interesting area, because I think in terms of trusting what can be done with the money, if there's a private sort of focus to this that's not connected with the school district or the municipality, I think you would have a lot of buy-in from people when you take it out of sort of the government's hands and make it and privatize some of that. The sports organizations can also help with this, with fundraising. They're very good at it. Just looking at their budgets in 2021, they were at $660,000. And of that, they were spending $50,000 to $60,000 to pay for fields outside of Mount Lebanon. So that's the money that they could put to good use if they knew it was getting more fields here. And then also, if we were to increase the revenue for fields, if you change that 17 to 25, you pick up some money. Going to 50, you pick up some money. If we had better software and someone really in charge, one person kind of doing this, you could start to bill for grass fields if you could. And then also you could look to the sports associations to do a pass-through fee, participation fee, pick up $5 a kid for any of the different programming. And again, pick up some more money there.
So so let's just pick on soccer for a moment. So soccer has a fee if you want your child to pay. What about children who can't pay?
all the sports organizations, they all have a policy where they will do scholarships for kids and stuff. Yeah, anybody who wants to play can pay, will play. There's every individual organization has that
And how
as
about
part of
the
their
equipment,
programming.
things like that?
Most will also help with that as well. Yeah, as far as I know, yeah. The ones I've been involved with all have the ability to help with that. So that's not a hindrance if it's something you can't pay. A lot of them have like used equipment swaps and all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Which makes sense.
yeah,
Even if you can't afford.
Yeah.
Stuff gets expensive.
So you want to go to the next one. So recommendations, this is a lot of small words, but the idea with the fields is to develop something we're calling right now the Lebo Sports Partnership. That's the kind of the working title. So this would be its own sort of its own organization. It would have a board that would have someone from the school district, someone from the municipality, and representatives from the sports groups that would serve on that board, hire the field czar. That would be a full-time position. And the board there would also be sort of an advisory board, which would have a member of every sports organization that uses a field, which would sort of take place of the sports advisory board, which is now defunct. So that would be a large committee that would sort of help figure out what needs to be done. It can help make some of the decisions on what needs to be done. And then a couple times a year, we would include also sports organizations that that don't use fields, that use basketball courts or swimming pools, hockey rinks, et cetera. And there's a lot of areas where those organizations can work together and do all kinds of things. They all have to pay taxes. They all have accountants. They all have volunteers that need clearances. So a clearance portal, there's a lot of storage. They share storage. All these little things that these organizations do, that if they work together and can kind of come up with best practices and share those, this would be an opportunity for them to do that as well. And then over time, if we master fields, you could pick up some of the other facilities like basketball courts, or the pool, the ice rink, golf course, tennis courts, et cetera, if we had come up with a model that works. Do you have a question? Okay.
Breaking out the fire.
So further research, we need to do a little bit more to understand the stadium pricing, and look at some other surrounding communities and what they're doing. The school district, we're hoping we'll work with that to come up with a simpler field structure. Both the school district and the municipality can come up with can increase the price of the turf fields as well. But we do want to make sure that those stay the same. We don't want people fighting over the cedar turf versus the upper practice field. Those are both turf fields. We want those to be priced similarly. So we definitely want some partnership there. And then after forming the Lebo Sports Partnership, we're working with the Community Foundation to start doing some private fundraising efforts, and then working to find the funds to returf in Lake, Middle, and Seymour, and develop McNeely Park. And I think I added one slide here, which is just a summary for you guys, taking out the school district's part of it and what is here for the municipality. So forming this the Lebo Sports Partnership, reevaluating the pricing of turf and grass fields, returfing Middle and Seymour Field, and adding lights to Seymour, and developing McNeely Park. The costs of some of those things are unknown, but I gave some numbers there for the impacts, so you can kind of see what the doing some of those things could do for in terms of monetary improvement.
Yeah, years ago, David, will remember, there was it Youth Sports Alliance?
Yes.
Yes,
So the Lebo Sports Partnership looks like in some ways it could be similar to.
yeah, it would have some overlap, but I think the main thing there is it would help, it would be the nonprofit organization that would set up sort of the field czar thing. And I don't think I mentioned, but I hope it's obvious that like any money collected would funnel back to whoever owned the property. This organization is not looking to make money, or in agreement with everyone would go into a fund to help returf it the next time, field improvements, what have you. Right. So, yeah, the sport, I think that it could be a better version of that alliance. It has definitely gone defunct in the last however many years. And the Sports Advisory Board is joining with, as you know, the Parks and Rec Board. And the idea there would be one person from this Lebo Sports Partnership Advisory Board could serve on that board and represent everybody who uses fields. So that's representing a lot of different groups that were on the sports advisory board. So then you really only have to worry about representing the golf course, the tent, the racket center, the pool, like the other amenities. So you've got all the field people kind of covered by one person on that board, since you're trying to kind of shrink who's on those boards. Anybody else have any other questions?
My only concern when I see the lighting is the neighbors. You know, I think that there would be obviously some pushback from people about having fields lit and how long they stay lit, and I understand why. I
Yeah,
Get it.
yeah.
You know, you buy a house next to a field, it's not lit, now all of a sudden it is.
Now, I think with the Seymour Field, I think most people are sort of expecting that, and with half of it already being lit, I hope that that's a less of an issue the second time around. It may or may not be. And also I think sports organizations typically 10, I think, is the latest they go during the week, and a lot of them are out of there by 9. So so I think if you needed to set a restriction to that, I think most people are on board with that.
I think we do have time employees restrictions in place already, right, for the parks?
And we control the hours of lighting for the field that's lit.
Yeah.
I can tell you, having been here the last time when we turfed, the field, there's a reason why the second half of that field wasn't lit. It was largely due to some concerns we heard from neighbors up on Beeland in terms of impacts.
I'm sure.
So that's in my opinion, we're very strong about that. They're not so happy about the turf going in, there was some, like for instance, one guy said, it used to annoy me when they're dragging the infield, but now the dust isn't really coming out anymore. So they want to play with the turf.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I'll get emails about lights being left on in middle.
Sure.
Why weren't those turned off? So, and we put them in Seymour, obviously it's much closer
Mhm.
to our houses, so that I'd expect that happiness to still be out there.
Right.
Well,
And I understand it as well. I do think there's something about, there are a lot that, as you can see, thousands of kids using these fields. And so I think you have to weigh that against a couple of people upset about lights being on until 9 or 10 p.m. And I think you will find from the time you turfed it the first time, I think that's doing it again. I think there has been an understanding, like you said, that it's not as dusty. The kids are using it. They're seeing the benefit. I think there's some benefits out there that people have, since that has been done the first time, they bought in, if you will, to it this time around.
Just so not everybody.
Well, again,
yeah.
I think when you say, hey, what about the 5,000 kids that are, playing sports in Mount Lebanon and could take advantage of this field? I don't know, maybe that has an impact.
I will say, very nice work.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
This is very well done.
Mhm.
It's in many respects very much in line with things that I've been thinking about. I think it's a little overcomplicated from a organizational perspective, personally. I think this is probably something that the municipality and the school district just need to create. I have had extensive conversations with various staff and a few commissioners about creating a public facilities authority, right, and just keeping it a public agency. I don't think we necessarily need, a full separate organizational body to do it. I think it's more a question of synthesizing the two public agencies to be more effective and efficient. I think that would probably be more cost effective to the taxpayer, and achieve the same ultimate goal. But that's, I think, a technicality. I would say the strategic goals that you laid out, I'm very much in alignment. I don't want Bird Park turfed. I don't want Bird Park field. That's me personally. I would rather build capacity other places and take that out. I think it's a money suck, to use a technical term. But I understand that we need to find other capacity before we do something like that.
Yeah.
So I think this is at this point, very much, in a great place. I think we do need to kind of get the legal folks, the point of Phil, we need to get the legal folks talking about what kind of legal framework do we want to establish? Because if it's an authority, if it's just a MOU between both agencies, right, frankly, I'm a believer that we probably want to staff up something that is, quasi-independent, not fully independent, to manage the software. But then we also need to think about the revenue model, right? And how do we sustain it? I think what we will probably find is that a lot of taxpayer dollars subsidize fields now. If we want to expand this, we are going to start saying, well, let's do fees, and it's going to become probably much more expensive than everybody would anticipate. And so then we're going to have to think about, okay, well, there's a balance that we want to strike with ensuring that public dollars are placed against this to subsidize cost, but to what degree, right? And as we start to kind of create these separate things, right, that will be a balance, because the school district would have less motivation to, because I think they rightly should be focused on academics and less worried about field maintenance, but they're a significant amount of money from them goes to this, not just us. So I think this is, for me, it's like the actual, like picking the fields and where to do it and where to turf, that's kind of secondary. For me, this is really a discussion about organizational model and kind of financial capacity planning. Because once we nail those two things down, then we will ultimately be able to get down this path much more efficiently.
Right. I don't disagree with that. I think my only comment would be when it does come to the point to figure out what you do to improve and the funding for that. I think to take into account all these organizations that use them and know what's needed and what's there. And they don't need to, you know, if to plan a McNeely Park, you don't need to do another study. You've got a group of people that can tell you exactly what is needed in that park.
Sure.
Without spending more time and money trying to figure that out. You have a body of people that know that. I also think there's a lot of private fundraising money out there in the community that would be willing to do some of these projects. And again, they'd be more likely to want to give that money to a private organization versus a public one. So I think that's something to consider as well.
No, I think that's fair, but the balance that you always strike with that is, you know, fundraising for a new project is great. But now you got to sustain it,
That's right.
right? And people are less willing to donate. So at some point you need to sustain capacity with fees or with taxes or some other thing. So the one-off, frankly, I'm less worried about the one-off contribution. I'm more worried about that ongoing sustaining funding. And how do we ensure that that's going to be in place long-term so that we're not deteriorating fields,
Right.
right? That, so I totally agree,
Yeah.
right?
But I think
these
there's
balancing-
the private public, again, it's a cooperation between both. I think the community foundation would tell you that if you set up if funds, endowment funds and things like that, that does have a long-term and longevity thing that can help contribute to those things, and those do work in the long term. It's just a matter of, again, setting it up, and there is clearly a lot of like legality to this, that to figuring out the right structure. I'm in complete agreement with that.
So we've got,
Sorry.
oh, did you have something to say?
Well, you started talking first, so that's okay. No, I was just gonna make the comment about, trying to do with assets that belong to school assets, but you know, some people say, I don't want to donate to quasi-government thing, yet these are
They're owned by the government.
government paid for.
Right.
It's, you know, there is, you know, if you're talking about, you know, Markham Field, or you're talking about Hoover, you know, that's a school district piece of property.
Correct.
So we can't totally step away from that because, you know, it's theirs,
Right.
it's municipalities. I don't know how to solve the nut, but it just, that's
Right.
the reality we have to deal with.
And I think the school district is overwhelmingly positive and supportive of the concept, which is, I think it should be noted. I mean, they are eager to cooperate, participate in whatever is a solution. Like one of the things that we did, which was unique, was we standardized the start times. And then it was maybe like 1,200 hours
Yeah, we
that added by standardizing the start time at each field. Each school set their own, each principal set their own start time. We went back and presented it and they said, okay, 4 o'clock was the start time. And I think we gained like 1,000 hours a year.
There's a lot of just, it's been done, this is how it's always been done. And so if you go back and question, just in meeting with David, we were complaining about, you know, my registration for flag football closes in August or September and the field meetings in July, and I don't know anything. And he was like, well, that was set by somebody who's no longer
Yeah, let's fix that.
part
Okay.
of it. So I don't need to have it in July. That's not me setting it in July. We were doing it in July because we've always done it in July, but it could be if this person agreed in another time. So there's all kinds of things just by the discussions and getting the right people in rooms that can improve in the efficiency of things.
Amanda's right, like, I've had conversations with the AD about this, and I've had conversations with board members, they're seeing this the same time we are, right? So they've compiled this data, and everyone has been very positive about it. To Andrew's point, it's very clear that we need to figure out how we work better together, because that has not been a priority of either organization. You know, the school has certain priorities in place. They have to make sure fields are available. If they got a team going to playoffs, that means more time, and then that eats into some of our, whether it's fall or spring sports, and then, you know, we can't reserve. We're on their fields, they're on our fields, right? Sometimes not for official sports, but certainly the kids use our fields. So I think there's that willingness to figure out how to work together, even more so now that the problem has been defined with hard numbers. Whereas before, and I think, you know, whoever was around, you know, we had some of these field conversations just as I was coming on as a commissioner, but it did drop off of, you know, we had money for Bradford in, some of that dropped, we moved it, there was money for this that dropped and hasn't been there. But I don't think the need has changed, right, in however many
You know,
years.
the
It's
need's
not,
been there since at least when we did the comprehensive plan in 2013.
Yeah.
And maybe even identified before that, and we actually had a bond issue that failed to put the fields on McNeely.
Yeah.
So again, this need has been known for a long time, and if anything, I'll tell you that it's probably only grown since that point.
Well, and I think public, and maybe I'm only seeing one side of it because I am definitely entrenched in youth sports, but I think there has been a shift in the importance of it, and I think it's kind of front and center in people's minds. I think you saw that from the research you've done in the Master of Parks Plan and everything, that's definitely what people, it's one of the things that's high on the list of things that people are looking forward to improve. So I think it's timing wise, I think it's a good time to do it as compared to maybe previously. And maybe, obviously, there's always going to be people who don't like this or that, but I think there's kind of a swell of people wanting to do something and ready to do something that can make an impact.
there's two things that I'd like, I agree with Andrew 100%. I think we need to understand the options of legal structures that are available to do this kind of thing, whether it's internal, external, however that shakes out. It's clear that that organizational part of this needs to get done. We need to understand how it all fits with David's organization. And I would also love to get some sense of, you know, like we've looked at McNeely Field for just walking trails, which I don't think is a good idea. We've looked at McNeely Field as a potential for feasibility for rec centers and the cost of all that. The idea of having that, you know, kind of on the edge of the municipality. For fields, I think it makes much more sense. I've always thought that. We've got this plan sitting there, and I'm not saying that we have to have that plan that was done be implemented, but I would love to know, you know, it's not like we're gonna squeeze 10 more fields on that lot. What does that cost in today's dollars? And we don't need a huge detailed plan, but I think it would be great if Gateway can sharpen the pencil and just give us, you know, hey, we're probably talking in the X to Y range. And then we can start thinking, because that goes along with the conversation, I think, because then we start talking about, you know, lights on Seymour, that does start having an effect. Like maybe they can use that more now for other field sports they weren't able to use. It has an effect for us doing things at the school, right? Putting some of those other things in school that we know will benefit our kids. I say our kids, kids in general that aren't affiliated with, say, a school sport, but we know that that comes into play. That's going to require a conversation with the school. You know, it's on your property, but we know it benefits recreation programming and vice versa. So, you know, I'm not saying there has to be a formula, 10% here, 9% there, but it would be good to start understanding what some of that stuff costs.
Purely updating, we were talking about McNeely, 2004 cost to today,
Right.
with, you know, with the guesstimate.
Is that something?
We had a detailed breakdown of the cost of that at that time. It'd just be a matter of updating the unit prices to reflect the current
Right.
conditions. Some of the environmental concerns that exist down there, there are some streams and wetlands that
Streams,
pass through the property, so those rules have changed significantly since 2004. So I would just recommend some due diligence to make sure that we, you know, there's no fatal flaws there.
Like
We
a
had talked-
permitting update, that kind of stuff.
Well, and you gotta cross the stream to get to it.
Well, there's also some stormwater requirements that didn't exist in
Yeah.
2004, because
There's also
granted, that was part of that cost.
yeah,
So that's.
there's also a city of Pittsburgh component to this, because there is a city of Pittsburgh sewer that tries to pass
Yes.
through the property. So just a lot of little things related to it. At the point in time that we were looking at it, we were gonna try to negotiate a grading easement with Brookdale, because the back of their property comes
Yes.
down there, and we could actually get more space by grading over further on the group, and we never got past that conversation at that point in time. So a lot of little things to look at and
20
update.
years, a lot can change, a lot can change.
Yeah, but I still think it's very doable, and I mean, what you're trying to create there is a big level flat pad, whatever the fields turn out to be, you make it as big as you can make it.
Right.
And you balance the cut and fill, because you don't want to
Right.
lose any material, so
Right,
it's still pretty much the same concept.
right, right. We gotta move on, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate all the work of the committee. Thanks.
And,
Okay, Mr. Milliron, you're up. Hi, how are you?
Good evening. Brought some folks, some colleagues from Patrick to join me this evening to talk about Active Uptown. So we all know about Vibrant Uptown. Well, now we're active. So a couple things. When we were involved in the Vibrant Uptown planning process, there were a lot of conversations and a lot of sidebar about various things that we want to accomplish with this. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So as we were looking at the sidewalks and conduit and lighting and all of those things, lots of folks had various ideas about Clearview Common or Parse Way or Clock Tower Plaza. And we really need to keep folks focused on the game at hand. Well, now we have the opportunity to look at those areas, and that's really what Active Uptown is about. Activating the streetscape project that we've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. So about 2 years ago, knowing that we wanted to do this, I applied for a grant with DCD to match local dollars to execute the planning process. So we have some good ideas. There were ideations that came out of the Vibrant Uptown project. We also have plans that are in the library that Patrick, I know, has been studying. But like, for instance, the partnership placemaking plan that some folks on this commission had seen. So there's been already some thought to what we could do to further activate the Uptown district. But what we haven't done is taken that through a public process. And that's really what we are looking to do with Active Uptown. Take a look at some of those ideas, come up with some new ideas through the public process and our stakeholders, conceptualize those, get an opinion of cost, and then go to bat to try to find dollars that the commission and the community feels might be appropriate to go after. So the municipality is going to be leading this process, but we've also brought in our good friends from the design committee to be the steering committee from the Mount Lebanon Partnership. We've also invited Port Authority to sit in on this. Again, we're looking at Clearview Common, Parseway. Parseway is half owned by PRT, Pittsburgh Regional Transit. So they'll be at the table. And we're looking to go through that process to come up with some good plans. I don't want to steal any thunder from my good friends at Patrick. I know they have some thoughts as well, so I'll let them run through it. And then, of course, obviously, we'll be here to entertain any questions, but.
When this was initially envisioned, it was always envisioned as that two-part project.
Right.
Doing the uptown streetscape and then doing the placemaking. And then when we started getting into a conversation about funding, and it was like right in the middle of the pandemic, costs were going crazy. And we had put money away, and I want to say it was like $900,000 for placemaking. But I know that we moved some of that when we got into the costs of the streetscape. And then we had talked, and then it was a decision to move forward, knowing that we couldn't fund part one and part two. So we moved forward with part one. Always with the thought, hey, we'll come back to this. Was all of that money reallocated to part one or no?
There should still be 100,
Wonder-
but still 100K.
Just a hundred, okay. Got it, thanks.
Forget what.
Yeah, I think Sarah's up next. I apologize. I didn't introduce. So we have Sarah Thompson and then Jenny Easton from Patrick MTR.
Hi, everybody. I'm assuming a lot of you know us from, and know Jenny from, doing the comprehensive plan, for Mount Lebanon. I, am a partner in the firm as well, and, I'm a landscape architect. And I've done a lot of kind of urban design and placemaking projects throughout my career, working in places like Squirrel Hill and streetscape projects, kind of throughout the region. We've done work up in Mount Washington, gateway projects and things like that. In Millvale, so lots of little things here and there, and lots of various streetscape projects. And I think our goals with this is to kind of bring some fresh eyes, to take a look at Clearview Commons, and this connection down to the PRT stop there, making sure that we're connecting the business district to that, and really making sure that pedestrian safety is obviously a big thing, but really placemaking is kind of the number one goal. How can we bring art into some of the new streetscape elements? Things as simple as, they've got these really cool walls now along the streetscape. Can we have an artist do like mosaics on it and things like that? Just to kind of really freshen that up and make it more dynamic. And engaging along the way. And how do we tell stories, story of Mount Lebanon through that art, through those art pieces? And so, maybe there might be some opportunities to remove a couple of parking spaces to create more pedestrian space, or these are things that I think, we're gonna have to like figure out some options and present to the public to get thoughts and ideas. Certainly, what do we do with the dumpsters along Parsway? How do we make Parsway a lot nicer, a nicer place to be in, and not like a backdoor to the transit stop there. So, those are some of the things that we'll be looking into. And, I think we're gonna try to come up with as many ideas as we can and work with the public, work with the steering committee to come up with more ideas and try to figure out, I think some easy small wins that will make big impacts. And then maybe some other larger projects that will, start to make a bigger impact, like say Clearview Commons, like what do we do with that to really make it a more engaging and active space and welcoming space.
So I think we're building on some of the things we heard and learned about during the comprehensive plan, developing some more specific concepts and then doing some problem solving around these specific nodes in Uptown. So with regard to scope, we're focused primarily on sites under municipal control, Parsway, Clearview Common, the Alfred Lot, and Clock Tower Plaza. We may wander in conversations about some other associated places. That always seems to happen. So for deliverable, we're looking at, as Eric said, preliminary design plans with concepts developed for those areas, opinion of cost in coordination with our friends at Gateway, evaluation of construction issues, and then kind of all the illustrations and exhibits that go along in presenting this material. To get there, we scoped a process that is a bit less of a time span than the comprehensive plan at 18 months. This we view taking anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 or 7 months. We, I think, have done a lot of work, or the municipality has learned a lot of things along the way that inform this process. So we scoped 3 meetings of the design committee. So the first would be to discuss broad concepts, kind of get us rolling and discuss public engagement. The second would be to review preliminary concepts, and the third would be to discuss revised plans, costs, and phasing. We have 2 public meetings, 2 public events scoped as part of this project. Again, the first would be kind of broad to gather ideas, have conversations about these places and how they should be serving people. And the second would be to present draft concepts and refine them with public feedback. As Eric said, we would have PRT at the table. They're, of course, an important stakeholder. And maybe anybody else, who has something to say to us about Uptown and, should have a voice in how these concepts are developed. I think that's about it in terms of scope. What did I miss?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I mean, this is a really great opportunity to go big, go bold, but then start to work through the process to get achievable projects. But we're really looking to be creative. A lot of great work has already been put behind us, and we're now going to bring it back to the forefront. You know, just as a refresher, you know, we did the public art master plan. That's complete. We have a phenomenal document. So this is really putting the cherry on top and sort of a great opportunity to summarize all of the effort and the ideations, I'll use that word again, all the thought process that's gone in to looking at Uptown and how to activate the totality of it, primarily through these keynotes. But getting a return on the investment that we made with the streetscape, and filling out those gaps and in the connectivity to the light rail station.
What happens to the existing placemaking plan that was in place?
That it is folded into this conversation that we're having. So that was a fantastic plan, and there's a lot of good meat there. The one issue with it, it never went through the public process machine. You know, it never really was daylighted as much with the public as I would feel comfortable with. There's great ideas in there. But this is the opportunity to, you know, blow the dust off that now that the streetscape is done. And I think the vision is still strong and achievable, but again, I'd like to see that go through a public process.
I think this will build upon that and go into a little bit more detail too.
Right.
One thing that had come up and was kind of to deal with later, and I said this is later, was someone said, well, I want to donate, let's say, painting something. The guy just went, okay, how do we maintain that? Who pays for that? Who's the design? Someone donates sculpture, who owns it? So would some of those questions be addressed of more of the nuts and bolts of maintaining as opposed to the ideas?
Recollection, that's already.
Yeah, that's the public art master.
That's in the
Yeah.
public
Yes, I don't know how
art
much that was finalized and how that folds into.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
What's coming up, so.
Yeah, that's a really chunky document and it's really soup to nuts. I mean, it's, no, but what it isn't, I mean, it's so basically the public art master plan, you can build the Guggenheim, but we don't know what's hanging on the walls yet. So we have the architecture for the programming, we just haven't vetted any of the programming or the conceptualizations of what could happen above and beyond public art again. So this could encompass, just to give some tangible examples. Sunshades, it gets wicked hot up here in the summertime, right? So there are probably some areas where we could introduce some shading elements. I know in the comp plan, the notion of a micro forest was there. This is a time to have a conversation and to maybe tease that out. So placemaking is a really broad umbrella concept, but if you distill it to its core essence, it's about activation, hence the name Active Uptown. So it's about bringing people up here, getting folks to linger, to experience Uptown, not just passively walk through it or pick up dry cleaning and split. We want people to really embrace Uptown as the common area for the community. And this goes a long way, I think, to do that.
Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And we'll be back with pictures and stuff
Fabulous.
and
Fabulous.
numbers.
No numbers, just pictures.
Just pictures.
The numbers. Robin, you're up next.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. You all know me, and I think most of you know Jeremy White. He's the Associate Director for IT and Facilities at the library. So this shouldn't take long. We've all received a copy of this already, and honestly, we're at the very beginning of this project, so we don't have a whole lot a lot of details to share yet. So this is kind of, we're always doing our best to improve the library and make it a great user experience and just really make the most of the absolutely amazing facility and resources we have available to us. The support we have from our community as far as not just the municipal tax dollars, but the local donations and bequests and things like that from our friends and from our donors. We have some funds to play with. And one of the most recent things, this would have been about a year and a half ago, we received a very large bequest to upgrade our children's library. It's a really fun room, but it is one of the last holdouts from our 1997 renovations. It hasn't really been touched since then, except for things like Bill Baldwin's train and, you know, some little projects like that. And while we were talking about the things we'd like to do over there, you know, some other things started bubbling up. Oh, we'd also like to, you know, improve the signage through the building. We'd like to change some of the shelving around to make better flow or reorganize the collection. We'd like to do something about the bathrooms, which don't really match the rest of the facility as far as how they look, current ADA needs, that kind of thing. And a lot of our technology, which we incorporated, it was about right before I got here, right about 10 years ago, like the self-checkouts, are ready to be replaced. So we decided it would really make sense if we could talk to somebody about organizing and unifying all of these projects so that we know what we're doing when, and so that we can kind of phase everything in and make it all work together. So this is just some pictures we took of our current space. We're using IKEA tables for displays. We've got a bunch of temporary stands in the walkway for sharing information. We just replaced our materials handler in the circulation office, which necessitated repainting the pretty tree mural around the children's library entrance. So that's just a plain white space now. And you can kind of see that the doors in constant use, and they've literally worn the paint off the door. So there's just some little things like that. Our shelves and the stacks go almost all the way up to the ceiling, which I'm 5'2". Even with a step stool, the top shelf is kind of not really something I can help a patron get a book from. So things like that. Our reference desk in the children's library, that's that central photo there. When you enter the children's library on each side, you can't really see the desk from that main entrance. And it's kind of hard to get your bearings if you've never been in there before. So this next slide is just some of the things that more modern libraries have been doing. They're lowering the shelves to make it more accessible for patrons. They're incorporating seating, lots of light, lots of color, making little kind of more, I don't want to even say private spaces, but just kind of nooks for people to, you know, get comfortable in. And it's kind of a combination of a private space to use the library, but also a place to come together as a community, to celebrate your particular community and the things that make it special, to acknowledge, you know, diversity and the natural elements around your library, and just really give your library more of a personal touch, I guess I should say. So these plans all go along with things we've been talking about for years. We wrote a strategic plan with the help of Rex Gadville in 2021. And we talked then we had actually been talking before COVID, right after we completed the Learning Lab, about doing a physical space because we had so many community members in the library and, you know, how are we using the space in the most effective way? And then, of course, COVID hit and nobody was in the library for a year and a half. So we kind of put a pin in that. But we are almost back to our pre-COVID numbers. In our last year before COVID, I think we had something like 348,000 visitors. And this past year, we had 301,000 visitors. So we're almost back up to those levels. Our meeting rooms are in constant use again. And after school, you know, the building is full of kids. So we definitely need to make sure that we're using the space in the most optimal way. We want to make sure that we're honoring the board's wish to explore green initiatives, ways that we can promote green practices, that we can make changes to the library that are sustainable and environmentally sound. And we want to make sure that we're honoring and supporting the needs for our library collection, which again, our physical circulation is actually higher. People are checking out more books now than they did before COVID. And our electronic resources are being used still very much as well. And we want to make sure that Public Works is kept in the loop as far as all of the little things they do for us every day, from hanging pictures to fixing our elevators to working on the sprinkler systems outside. So we need to make sure that they're involved in all of these steps as well. So we're not expecting to need to use municipal funds at this point for our project. We've got the Helene Bush Trust for Children's Library, which we plan to prioritize. And then we have a sizable savings of other bequests and donations. And the Friends of the Library, Susan Tracy, the Friends president, has indicated that they would be supportive of anything we wanted to do if we needed funds from them as well. We've also been in talks with Phil Avolio from Public Works about some of the projects such as restroom renovations being eligible for a Keystone grant, which is matching funds from the state for up to $750,000. So basically, we're just trying to make sure that we align with our mission, that we're making our library as inclusive, as welcoming, as useful as possible, that we make everything as fresh and beautiful as our Learning Lab, which is still relatively new since we completed it in February of 2020 and got to use it about 3 times before everything closed down. So it's very heavily used after school now, but it's a great space and it's very modern and it's flexible and dynamic. And that's what we want for our whole library. And we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the children's library and Helene Bush's desire to improve that space for the community. So basically, this is our next steps. We are looking into working with a consultant who will help us figure out all the different things we want to do. We have a very long list of things that we'd like to do, you know, money were no object, that kind of thing. And figure out, you know, what we can reasonably expect to do, create the phases for us, talk to the public, to key stakeholders, the municipality, board, friends, and figure out, make sure that we're on the right track as far as giving people what they actually need out of the library rather than what we think they want. To develop cost estimates and to finalize the plan and present it to the library board and to you again. So, so far, I'm not going to say we have because it was Jeremy. He did the bulk of the work in reaching out to several local architects. And basically, this project is smaller than most of them would like to touch based on what we think it's going to be. But we did get a response from one architect, which I think you all received copies of our proposal. And because I know nothing about this kind of thing really, other than a Learning Lab, I've never done much of a capital project before. So we talked to a former board member who was an architect and has her own firm and just asked her to review the proposal to see if she thinks it was reasonable. And she absolutely did. She said she's familiar with their work. She thinks it's, the right kind of firm to work with us, and their fees were reasonable. So we felt good about going forward with sharing the proposal with the library board, which we did in February. And that's really as far as we've gotten. We haven't signed off on the proposal. We wanted to talk to you all first. And, yeah, that's where we're at.
We did the proposal that I went right to this page. Is that being paid for from the grants? Is that just so?
It's all from our funds. Yes.
That's reasonable.
Good.
I think also a firm that you're all familiar with. They were just here last time for the presentation.
Yes.
Exactly.
Know the name, exactly.
And they've done so much work with libraries and schools. As you all know, I'm from Ohio. And
Impressive, yeah.
yeah, well, the public library of Steubenville in Jefferson County is. That's my home library. That's where I had my first job in a library, and they just did an absolutely incredible job with that main library. Everybody's so proud of it, and it's well earned. I mean, it's so creative and just well done, and really honors the history of the Carnegie Building in Steubenville. So I was really excited when I saw that they were the firm that worked with them.
My only comment is recognizing that there are always financial constraints. This is also one of those penny wise pound foolish moments. So I would want to give the consultants as much flexibility to bring the right ideas forward,
Yes.
rather than saying, hey, you've only got this much, so maximize it. Recognizing that is always the priority, but again, if this is such a great opportunity, right, to get the right people in and reimagine the space, I think it's well worth the consideration.
Thank you. I think that's one of the main reasons we wanted to do it in phases. Like, we have so much money now, and maybe we don't have enough to do some awesome thing, like hot tub in the library director's office. So maybe we do that 10 years from now.
It was a random thing you just came.
No, I don't know where that came from.
Not the budget.
The plans have been drawn up, but it was just, seriously though, something that we could bring in phases over the next several years so that we're coherent and it all works together, but we can afford it and we're not, wiping out our coffers.
The idea being, when you engage an architecture firm, is to say to them, here are our problems. No matter what it costs, what would be the best way to solve it? And then have them give you maybe 3 concepts, which I think is kind of built into this, as to how to solve the problem, going from maybe most expensive to least expensive, and let you look at that range and start thinking. Because sometimes, I mean, the reason you employ someone who's got the creative design ability is because they can think beyond what all of us mere mortals can. I mean, they really can. That's what their expertise is. And the minute you started to talk about this, I thought about that wonderful courtyard you have, and how can you bring the courtyard, start incorporating it into the children's library? And instead of maybe lots of colors in the library, what could you do with lighting to start pulling in that green? So see, that's why what I think Andrew is getting to is, you let them have a free range. You're giving them the money. Tell us what you would do if you could do whatever you wanted. And then scale it back, but at least let them have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Jeremy, did you have anything you want to add, or?
No, I think there was just born out of some intractable problems that we aren't
Yes,
interior designers and know how to
Right.
approach and service
the
desks.
bathrooms,
Yeah, well,
that's a big one.
those things we're working on as well, but that's the expertise that we're seeking, is things that we just
Right.
aren't qualified to understand about how the library is used and how public spaces are.
Two Phil questions.
Sure.
The library building is owned by the municipality. So first question is probably relatively easy. Is the library able to engage in the contract with the architect for these services? Or does that need to be municipality?
Yeah, I mean, anything that would actually end up being done, we would need at least our permission. Physical alteration, but as far as,
If there's no funding coming from the municipality, it does not, we don't have to put it out for bid. We don't have to worry about prevailing wage as long as.
You wouldn't, when it comes time for construction, you may have to worry about prevailing wage, but not for an architect's contract.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the next phase of this, which is actual construction
Construction.
implementation. Would we then be constrained because that's going to affect cost estimates?
When we did the learning lab, we put it out for public bid and most of that money came from our donated funds. So we were expecting that.
You can see, we'd also have to look at that source of the fund.
That's down the road once you know what those exciting projects. are. Just so everybody's prepared for.
The actual sticker shock.
Okay.
Good.
Everything else.
Any other questions?
It's done.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Robin and Jeremy. Appreciate it. All right. Updates.
Let's see, Mertza is proud to announce that we have hired our new executive director, Douglas DeForest. He is due to start March 25th, but we're very excited to have Doug on board. And then Outreach has a fundraiser planned for the last week in April. I believe it's Saturday, April 27th. Keep an eye out for that Outreach fundraiser. That's my opinion.
I am meeting with the school liaison on Wednesday, so I'll have an update.
I have been traveling, I have no update.
Okay, well, my update was just that. The library.
I just steal your thunder?
I'm done. And the Community Relations Board meets Wednesday. I was gonna say tomorrow, but today's Monday. They meet Wednesday, so. Residents
It's
Academy.
throwing off all of our rhythms.
I know.
We're all gonna show up tomorrow with this.
All right, great. Well, then you have a little bit of a break.
You do have a little bit of break. The only other thing of note is, and Eric's not in the room, I believe he will be attending the superintendent's second meeting with local business owners. Did one initial one,
Oh.
this is the second meeting.
Great. Yeah.
Again, in an effort to sort of reach out to the entire community, not just the student population, so. Million's also going to be participating there, and they have brought on a new communications director, and Laura and the superintendent and the new director at lunch, and we think we'll be able to establish a really good working relationship.
Wonderful. Great, Grant. Okay, see you in the big room.